Hello, Grace Point. I hope you're enjoying Saturate 2024. My name's Tracey Good, and thanks for the opportunity to share with you today. The theme for this year's Saturate is hope and a future, and the verse is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They're plans for good and not for disaster, plans to give you a future and a hope. The context of this verse is that Jeremiah is writing to the Israelites who are exiled to Babylon, away from their homeland. When I think of this situation, I imagine that this would be a period of enormous change and upheaval, with the Israelites probably in shock and feeling abandoned by God. I know that in my own life, there have been times of major and sudden change and trauma. I've had seasons of adversity and challenging circumstances, and I'm absolutely sure that you've had those as well. And I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes it's in those seasons, it's been hard for me to have hope and to believe and trust that God does indeed have good plans for my life. So to stop myself from falling in a heap during these seasons, I've tried to build in some habits that remind myself of three things and to build them into my life during the easier seasons so that they're established habits when I might hit some tough times. So the first is that I've started to remind myself that God is absolutely kind and that he loves me deeply. I do this nearly daily now as I go to sleep, and I try and think of at least three things each day to be thankful for and to look for where God was in those things. And this has created a habit that makes it easier for me to remember God's kindness when life does get challenging. And it's built my faith and trust that he will bring me through tough seasons. In fact, last year I did have a bit of a tough season for several months, and I was very pleased that despite those circumstances, I still absolutely believed in God's kindness and his love toward me. The second habit that I practice is to rest in his grace. At Grace Point, we define grace as his empowering presence. And for me, this rest is often physical rest, but at times it's also spiritual, emotional, and mental rest. I have had seasons of poor health, and at these times I have reminded myself of Romans 8:11, that the same Spirit who raised Jesus from the dead lives in me. And this Spirit is God's empowering presence, and it is now inside me. And so when I rest inside God's empowering presence and I trust that that same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead actually is in me, this builds my trust and my faith in him, and I'm able to find myself to carry on in his presence even when my health has been poor. And the last important truth I try to remember comes from Isaiah 40:31, that those who trust in the Lord will find strength and will soar high on eagle's wings, will run and not grow weary, will walk and not faint. And while I wait for God to show us his plans, I try to remind myself to trust him, and it's all going to turn out. So I hope these little practices that I've shared that help me might help you to maintain hope, to build a trust that God does indeed have good plans for you and for Grace Point. And I pray that you might have your own ways of building up your faith and trust, and ways of believing that God does have a hope and a future for you. So thanks, Grace Point, and bless you for 2024.